A life cut short. Ellen Greenberg, a young teacher's tragic end. Ellen Greenberg was a vibrant young woman full of life and promise. She was a dedicated first-grade teacher who touched the lives of many children with her kindness and enthusiasm. Her students adored her, and her colleagues respected her for her unwavering commitment to education. Ellen's passion for teaching was evident in everything she did, from the way she decorated her classroom to the innovative lessons she created to engage her students. Ellen Greenberg was a ray of sunshine, a dedicated first-grade teacher. She was known for her warm smile and her ability to make learning fun. Her classroom was a place of joy and discovery, where children felt safe and inspired. Ellen had a unique gift for connecting with her students, understanding their needs, and helping them reach their full potential. She was more than just a teacher. She was a mentor, a friend, and a role model. She had her whole life ahead of her. Ellen was engaged to be married, and she and her fiancé were planning their future together. They dreamed of starting a family, traveling the world, and building a life filled with love and happiness. Ellen's friends and family described her as a loving and compassionate person who always put others before herself. She had a bright future, and her life was filled with endless possibilities. But on January 26, 2011, her light was tragically extinguished. That fateful day, the world lost a beautiful soul, and the lives of those who knew and loved Ellen were forever changed. The news of her death sent shockwaves through the community, leaving everyone in a state of disbelief and sorrow. How could someone so full of life be taken away so suddenly and so violently? Ellen was found dead in her Manayunk, Philadelphia apartment. The circumstances of her death were both mysterious and deeply troubling. Her fiancé discovered her lifeless body and immediately called 911. The scene that greeted the first responders was one of horror and confusion. Ellen had sustained multiple stab wounds, and the initial assumption was that she had been the victim of a brutal attack. Her death, shrouded in mystery, would become a case that captivated the nation. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that there were many unanswered questions. The police and medical examiners were faced with a perplexing puzzle, and the more they delved into the details, the more complicated the case became. The media quickly picked up the story, and soon, Ellen's tragic end was making headlines across the country. A case that demanded answers. The investigation into Ellen's death was thorough and exhaustive, involving multiple law enforcement agencies and forensic experts. Every piece of evidence was scrutinized, and every lead was followed. Yet, despite the best efforts of those involved, the case remained unresolved. The conflicting findings and the lack of clear answers only added to the frustration and heartache of Ellen's family and friends. Ellen's story is one of heartbreak and a relentless pursuit of justice. Her family refused to accept the initial ruling of suicide, believing that Ellen would never take her own life. They embarked on a tireless quest for the truth, hiring private investigators, consulting with experts, and advocating for a re-examination of the case. Their determination and love for Ellen fueled their fight for justice, even in the face of overwhelming odds. It's a story that raises more questions than it answers. The more the family uncovered, the more inconsistencies and discrepancies they found. The evidence seemed to point in different directions, and the lack of a definitive conclusion left everyone searching for answers. How could such a promising life be cut short in such a senseless and violent manner? What really happened to Ellen Greenberg on that tragic day? A story that speaks to the very core of our justice system. Ellen's case highlights the challenges and complexities of criminal investigations, the importance of thorough and unbiased examinations, and the need for transparency and accountability. It also underscores the impact of such tragedies on the families left behind, who must navigate their grief while seeking justice for their loved ones. And the fight for truth when the unthinkable happens. Ellen's family continues to push for answers, holding vigils, organizing protests, and keeping her story alive in the public eye. Their unwavering commitment to finding the truth is a testament to their love for Ellen and their belief that justice must be served. They hope that one day, the full truth will come to light, and Ellen's memory will be honored with the justice she deserves. The circumstances surrounding Ellen's death were deeply troubling. The initial investigation raised many questions, and the subsequent re-examinations have only added to the confusion. The conflicting reports and the lack of clear evidence have made it difficult to reach a definitive conclusion. Yet, despite the challenges, Ellen's family remained steadfast in their pursuit of the truth. The brutality of the scene was shocking. The multiple stab wounds and the apparent struggle suggested a violent confrontation, yet the lack of defensive wounds and other inconsistencies left investigators puzzled. The scene was a stark contrast to the Ellen that everyone knew and loved, making it even harder to comprehend the tragedy that had unfolded. And the subsequent investigation, riddled with inconsistencies and questionable conclusions, has left a family shattered and a public searching for answers. The initial ruling of suicide was met with disbelief and outrage, leading to calls for a more thorough investigation. The family's relentless pursuit of the truth has kept the case in the public eye, highlighting the need for justice and accountability. This is the story of Ellen Greenberg, a story of a young woman whose life was tragically cut short, leaving behind a legacy of love, kindness, and a relentless pursuit of justice. Ellen's memory lives on in the hearts of those who knew her, and her story continues to inspire others to seek the truth and fight for justice. A story of a life cut short, a family's unwavering love, and a fight for justice that continues to this day. Ellen Greenberg's legacy is one of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of love. Her family and friends remain committed to honoring her memory and ensuring that her story is never forgotten. The quest for justice for Ellen Greenberg is far from over, and her story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of truth, justice, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. January 26, 2011. It was a day that would forever be etched in the memories of the residents of Manayunk, a quaint neighborhood in Philadelphia. The winter chill had settled in, and the streets were quiet, blanketed in a layer of frost. A gruesome discovery in Manayunk? The picturesque streets of this historic neighborhood were about to become the backdrop for a chilling mystery. It was a cold January day when the call came in, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes everything feel a little more somber. The call was frantic, filled with panic and desperation, a frantic call to 911. The voice on the other end was that of Ellen Greenberg's fiancé, who had just returned home to their shared apartment. Ellen Greenberg's fiancé, returning home to their Manayunk apartment, discovered a scene of unimaginable horror. The apartment, which had always been a place of love and comfort, was now a crime scene. Ellen lay lifeless on the kitchen floor, surrounded by blood. The sight was something out of a nightmare, a stark contrast to the normalcy of their everyday life. She had been stabbed multiple times. The brutality of the attack was evident in the sheer number of wounds. The details as they emerged were chilling. Each new piece of information added another layer of horror to the already gruesome scene. Ellen, a petite young woman, had suffered 20 stab wounds. She was a beloved teacher, known for her kindness and dedication to her students. 10 of these wounds were to the back of her neck. The precision and location of these wounds raised many questions. The sheer brutality of the attack was staggering. It was hard to fathom who could commit such a heinous act. Who could have done this? And why? These were the questions that haunted everyone who heard about the case. The apartment itself painted a perplexing picture. It was as if time had stood still, everything in its place except for the horrific scene in the kitchen. The door was locked from the inside. This detail added another layer of mystery to the already baffling case. There were no signs of forced entry. It was as if the perpetrator had vanished into thin air. No indication of a struggle. The apartment was eerily calm, a stark contrast to the violence that had occurred. The scene was as confusing as it was horrifying. Investigators were left with more questions than answers. As investigators descended upon the apartment, one question loomed large. How could this have happened? The evidence seemed to point in multiple directions, each more perplexing than the last. Was this a suicide, as some would later suggest, or was it something far more sinister? The debate would rage on, but the truth remained elusive, hidden in the shadows of that cold January day. The initial ruling homicide, a brutal scene, points to foul play. The Philadelphia medical examiner, Marlon Osborne, was tasked with unraveling the mystery of Ellen Greenberg's death. The brutality of the crime scene was undeniable. The sheer number of stab wounds, the location of the wounds, everything pointed towards a violent struggle. After a thorough examination, Dr. Osborne reached a verdict. Homicide. Ellen Greenberg had been murdered. The news, while devastating, came as no surprise to those who knew and loved Ellen. This was not a suicide. This was cold-blooded murder. The investigation continued. Detectives followed every lead. They interviewed anyone who had contact with Ellen. But as the days turned into weeks, no arrests were made. The case grew colder. And the question of who killed Ellen Greenberg remained unanswered. Section 4. A shocking turnaround, the suicide ruling and the locked room conundrum. Just when it seemed like the investigation had hit a dead end, a shocking development turned the case on its head. The Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, under controversial circumstances, changed Ellen Greenberg's cause of death from homicide to suicide. The suicide ruling sent shockwaves through Ellen's family and friends. How could a young woman, full of life and loved by so many, take her own life in such a brutal manner? The idea was unfathomable to those who knew her best. The locked room mystery further fueled the controversy. If Ellen had indeed taken her own life, how was it possible that the apartment door was locked from the inside? The inconsistencies were glaring, and they raised serious questions about the thoroughness of the investigation. Section 5. Unanswered questions, the family's fight for truth and the search for answers. The suicide ruling was a bitter pill to swallow for Ellen's family. They were left in a state of shock and disbelief, grappling with the sudden and tragic loss of their beloved daughter. The official explanation seemed to contradict everything they knew about Ellen, a young woman full of life and potential. They refused to believe that their daughter, a vibrant and promising young woman, would take her own life. Ellen had always been a source of joy and inspiration to those around her. Her infectious smile and positive outlook on life made it hard for her family to accept the notion of suicide. Armed with unwavering determination, they embarked on a relentless pursuit of justice for Ellen. They knew that the truth was out there, buried beneath layers of uncertainty and unanswered questions. Their journey was not just about seeking justice for Ellen, but also about finding closure and peace for themselves. Their search for answers led them down a long and arduous path. They faced numerous obstacles and setbacks, but their resolve never wavered. Each step they took was fueled by their love for Ellen and their belief that the truth would eventually come to light. They consulted with independent forensic experts who raised serious doubts about the suicide theory. These experts pointed out inconsistencies in the evidence and suggested alternative explanations for Ellen's death. The family's determination to uncover the truth was further strengthened by these findings. They uncovered inconsistencies in the police investigation. The more they delved into the details, the more questions arose. Why were certain pieces of evidence overlooked? Why did the investigation seem rushed? These questions haunted the family and drove them to dig deeper, and they fought tirelessly to have their daughter's case reopened. They organized protests, held press conferences, and submitted petitions. Their efforts were aimed at bringing attention to the case and pressuring the authorities to take a closer look at the evidence. The family's unwavering belief in Ellen's case, coupled with the mounting evidence they uncovered, began to attract media attention. News outlets started covering the story and the public's interest was piqued. The family's fight for justice was no longer a private battle, it had become a public crusade. The story of Ellen Greenberg, a young teacher whose life was tragically cut short, resonated with people across the country. Her story touched the hearts of many, and her family's quest for justice inspired others to stand with them. Memorial services and community vigils were held in her honor, keeping her memory alive. The public wanted answers and they demanded justice for Ellen. The outpouring of support from the community gave the family strength and hope. They were no longer alone in their fight. They had a whole community rallying behind them, united in their demand for truth and justice.